Last Tuesday was the 20th anniversary of the opening of the prison at Guantanamo Bay, and there have been a lot of events this last week, one of which was an Amnesty event, which was quite interesting. We heard from ex-prisoners. They're very touching, from two girls whose father died in the bombings in New York. These people are all in favor of closing the prison at Guantanamo Bay, as we have been in the Amnesty community. And in our local Group 48, we've had prisoners since the prison opened. We still represent Safula Paracha, who's been cleared for release, but like many of the other detainees, has not been released. So one of the purpose for these calls is to keep the pressure on the administration and to write your senators and president and ask them for the release of the prisoners at Guantanamo Bay, or to transfer them to another facility outside of the Guantanamo Bay facility. They say they don't want to transfer them to any place within the United States. I think they could hold them in Leavenworth just fine, but it's beyond my call. So we just need to keep the pressure up. That's the reason we're having Steve, who worked at Guantanamo from July of 04 till April of 05.
Great to see everybody out for this, unfortunately, really negative, which is the 20th anniversary of this terrible facility and the war on terror. So as Marty said, Steve was a Guantanamo guard, and also Steve Wood formed a really special friendship with a detainee at Guantanamo, who we'll talk a little bit about in this interview. And they've received, significant press coverage, and a feature film was actually made about them. So Steve Wood became somewhat of a high-profile figure as a result of all of that, which of course helps our cause by bringing light to the issues that Guantanamo brings up in terms of human rights. My first question for you is, how old were you when you joined the military, and what were your motivations for joining?
I was 19, and I came from a very patriotic family, hardcore Republicans, and my grandpa, he was in the Navy, and he loved to tell stories of traveling around the world, and how much fun he had, and how important it was, become a man, and also I was really into, I love watching movies. I had basic training, that challenge always looked amazing to me, especially as a movie In the Army Now with Pauly Shore, which was really corny, but it was a comedy, but for some reason, it made me want to go through basic training, and I also wanted to get into law enforcement. So I signed up as an MP.
And was your family proud of you when you joined?
They were, yeah, definitely. And I came from a really small town, and a lot of people from that town, ended up joining the military.
I know that in the course of your time at Guantanamo, and then of course in all the years since Guantanamo, your feelings about U.S. foreign policy and the actions of the military have really changed during that time. And now that you have such different opinions about foreign policy, what does your family think about all of that, and your friends?
We really don't talk about it a whole much. My older brother, him and I, we can talk calmly and everything about it, and we each give our side, but the rest of the family, they kind of pretend I don't have the views I do. So I kind of just make a fly on the wall during those conversations, and I try not to get upset with some of the things they say, But
does that include on the issue of Guantanamo? I know you had said at some point that you had a number of people in your life who still remained pretty conservative, but agreed with you on Guantanamo after hearing you out about it.
Yeah, they agree with me on that part, but it's still not a subject that's brought up very often.
Yeah. Were you surprised when you were assigned to be a guard at Guantanamo?
I was, because like, see, we only had like, I think it was like a couple week warning before we got deployed at the time. And Iraq was like getting really bad at that time.
Right.
So like they were sending a lot more troops because there's a lot of, and yeah, we all got mentally prepared to get, sent over there. And, the last second they told us Guantanamo Bay. So at first I was a little disappointed, but then, at least I was like, okay, there's, face to face with the people that, took part in, 9/11, that's doing my duty, as an American. And I was proud. So
that was another question I had, is what did you already know about Guantanamo before you were assigned there? So it sounds like you mainly thought of it as the place where we sent people who committed the 9/11 attack.
Yeah, whatever, George Bush said on TV, the worst of the worst,
Sure.
And that's, that I assumed, like he was telling the truth. You should be able to trust your leaders, right?
And was Guantanamo something that would come up in your community before you went with your friends and family? Like, would people talk about it? Would people say, like, we're going to send you to, was it a joke? Was it something that you felt like came up in your life before you were sent there?
Not a whole lot, actually. Yeah. So I was on, I was in Oregon in the National Guard, but I was on active orders prior to going to Guantanamo. So like all my friends that I hung out with were in the military. So like, yeah, the topic would come up with other military members and stuff, but like not really the family.
So what are some things that you think would really surprise the average American about Guantanamo?
Just that the horror stories are true, like, and like I never saw, torture happening, but like I saw, the after effects, and like, just being there, like I've talked to reporters like that have been there also, like just walking into that, Camp Delta, like there's a dark feeling about it, and it's real, for sure. And especially when you see detainees, you can tell they've been through something dark,
Yeah. Have you, obviously you've had experiences talking to Mohamedou about his torture experiences, which we can talk more about later. Did you talk to other guards or other people at the facility who had firsthand experiences with the torture?
So I had a special job, it was kind of like a quasi black site, and the people that were my bosses were the intel side, so we're the interrogators and analysts, and like, so the interrogator and main analyst that ran the Mohamedou's torture were there for the first 2 months I was there, so I didn't have to deal with them very much, but so I really didn't get it, and I was my rank was way lower than theirs, so I didn't get to speak to them very much, but I've spoken to one guy since, like actually a few months ago, that took part in Mohamedou's torture, and it was for a total other reason, and it was kind of a twisted conversation, but yeah, other than that, yeah.
Do you feel like it was something that was acknowledged by people at the facility when you were there, that torture had occurred there or was continuing to occur there?
No, it's something that nobody talked about it. You do not talk about that there,
What was life like on the base living there?
I mean, the place was beautiful, honestly, outside of Camp Delta. Like it's like the Caribbean, you got, 75 degrees to 85 degrees year round, sunny, it's really sunny. The beaches are beautiful. The water's amazing. And first few weeks there, I went to the beach a few times and, snorkeling, and I loved it. But like, after like working, in Echo Special with Mohamedou, after that, I think I went to the beach one more time, so probably 3-4 times total. When I was in this beautiful Caribbean place, I went to the beach, and I went to antisocial, and it was a depressing place after that. Like I didn't see the beauty anymore.
Were other guards and other just people working on the base going to the beach and having a good time there?
Yeah, they were actually.
So it was a generally it was a place where there was a lot of like recreational activities and fun.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because I mean, you got Camp Delta and like the like JTF Gitmo was the large, I guess, unit that ran Camp Delta, like the detention facility. But there's also a naval base for like years and years and years. So I mean, there's like families. There's a high school. There's middle school. So like it's like there's like a normal community, McDonald's, library, and everything, and then you got the dark side.
Do you have any idea like what the population of the American base related population there would be?
Yeah, I can't remember.
But large.
Yeah. It's decently large, yeah. Especially with the prison there now, much bigger.
Yeah, that might be one of the things that would surprise Americans the most, I think. I don't think people realize we have such a huge presence there.
Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm. How did you get assigned to guard just one high value detainee? Do you know if there was some kind of selection process for your assignment?
Yeah, so my company I came from was from Oregon, obviously. There's like 30 to 40 of us. And the command sergeant major, who was the superintendent of the Camp Delta itself, went to all the company first sergeants and said, hey, give me a few names and have these people, come to a meeting, this formation. And we ended up being, a few people from each unit showed up, and we ended up sitting around this table, probably I guess 20 guys or so. And the sergeant major asked each person one question. It was like, what do you do? And what did you do before you got here in Guantanamo Bay? And, there was one other question he asked, and it was totally irrelevant. And so they took 5 of us, and 4 of us from Oregon. And turns out, like, my first sergeant and the command sergeant major that was choosing these individuals had known each other for like 20 years. They were like young soldiers together, so it was more of like a favor.
Mm-hmm. It felt like it was a favor to you because you were from Oregon, and it was kind of an Oregon crew. But does that mean that it was like a post that other people wished that they got and didn't get? And if so, why?
Yeah, I think my first sergeant said, hey, my guys are really squared away, and he could, his opinion mattered to the command sergeant major, so he chose him. And if the position was, other people would want it, like nobody else knew what was going on in there, like they didn't know there was because it was like one, secret little prison within the prison. And yeah, like I was saying, like all the rest of the company from Oregon, like they didn't know what my job was,
Yeah, so the lack of the transparency culture at Guantanamo extended to its staff.
Yeah, exactly. Like the only people that knew who was in this little facility were the intelligence side, like interrogators and analysts, and the top leaders,
I
know the ICE. So go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say even like the ICRC at the time were trying to get access to Mohamedou. They knew he was in Guantanamo Bay. And,
sorry, the International Committee of the Red Cross.
Yeah, sorry. And they wanted access, because that's their job. They want access to each, detainee and make sure that they are, being treated right and getting communication with the family. And, he was, I think when I was there for the first 3 months at least, he was the one detainee that was off limits to the ICRC.
Wow. We'll talk more about why that might have been in a minute. Have you talked to other guards about their assignments at Guantanamo, ones who were not guarding Mohamedou and were on more general guard duty, and compared notes about what your experiences were like?
Yeah, I've talked to like Brandon Neely and a few of the other former guards that have been public, and all their stories are different, and way different. Like Brandon Neely was he escorted the first detainee, on Guantanamo off the bus, like his story was radically different than mine. And yeah, everybody's got either their own story, but really interesting. They all feel the same way though, the darkness of the place.
So let's talk a little bit about Mohamedou Salahi. What had you been told about him before you first met him?
I had never heard his name until about 5 minutes before I met him.
Oh, so when you were given the assignment, you weren't given his name?
No, not at all. Like we were chosen, and then we were. I think they said you're gonna be watching one detainee, and then my shift started like I think 6 or 7 hours later, and so I was when we're told, hey, you got one detainee, I automatically assume it's gonna be some like giant figure, some really dangerous, or like like one of the top leaders of Al Qaeda, So yeah, anyway, 5 minutes before I met him, we got a little briefing because the guard shift, the outgoing guard shift, kind of gave us a rundown of why he was being held in this location and what our duties were, and a little bit of his background story.
And what did they tell you about him?
They said he was, he had his cousin, which is true. His cousin was Abu Hafs, was bin Laden's spiritual advisor, and he was wanted for $25 million or something like that. And they talked about like he was in the Millennium Plot. There's in 2000 there's an attempted attack, by a Canadian trying to drive over the border to the U.S. But it got stopped. The border police. Then they also said that he was a recruiter for the 9/11 hijackers.
So they didn't tell you anything about what he was like. They just told you what his like terrorist profile supposedly was.
Yeah. Then they said, but yeah. Then they're like, well, then they also went into how because when Mohamedou like hit the whole torture thing, like they took him from Camp Delta, blindfolded him, he got beat up, then putting on a boat, drove around floated around the bay for 3 hours, getting abused, and then brought back to Guantanamo, and then taken to this special secret area, Camp Echo Special, and then he eventually broke, and then that's why he was there. And so by the time I got there, he was being rewarded. He broke. He started making up, saying he was a part of everything. So our job was to build him. He told us to hang out with him. Record literally everything he does, everything he says, everything he does. Like when he eats, and just keep him locked up. That was my entire job for 10 months. And yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about what you understand happened to Mohamedou on his route to Guantanamo. When was he first picked up, and kind of just like if you like what steps along the way until he got to Guantanamo?
Yeah, I don't know like the dates very well. I know I think it was in early 2000 or early 2001 or late 2000, like the CIA intercepted a phone call, and it was Mohamedou's cousin was on bin Laden's satellite phone. He calls Mohamedou, requesting money, to help out because his cousin, the family's big and over there, and everybody looks out for each other, so he was asking for Mohamedou to give money to his, to his mother, to help out the family. And the CIA automatically, they probably thought it was bin Laden himself, I'm assuming, calling Mohamedou, so that put him on the radar. And then, Mohamedou ended up going to Germany, and they started watching him there. He went to Canada. The Canadians started spying on him, he found little holes in his walls with cameras and stuff. And he started getting freaked out, and he's like, okay, I got to go home, So, and this is really, after September 11th, about this time. And so we went home, and I think it was in November of 2001, I think he got he actually turned himself in to the Mauritanian police, and he was there for a while. Then the CIA showed up.
Because they were trying to find him. He knew they were trying to find him.
Yeah, everybody was trying to investigate, what he had taken part in, and, the Mauritanians, they're like, yeah, you're innocent. There's no reason we need to hold you, but the CIA, the U.S. government had all of the control, So the CIA showed up with a plane, flew him to Jordan. I think he was in Jordan for 6 months, and got treated really bad there, and then to Bagram Air Base.
Treated really bad there.
What's that?
What does it mean, treated really bad?
Just really rough interrogation. I feel like anything that is illegal, anything that a police officer can't do in the United States, anything past that is pretty much torture. It's brutal, inhumane. And but yeah, then he ended up in Bagram, and he was there for 2 because most detainees, that was like the first stop. Take him to Bagram. They interrogated him a little bit, and he was there 2 weeks, and then they threw him on a plane, sent him to Guantanamo Bay. Then he was in, I think, the general population more in Delta for quite a while.
And he was under a special new program, right? Is that correct? Like he was one of the first people that they used the enhanced interrogation techniques authorized by Rumsfeld on?
Yeah, he was the second detainee. I think Katani was the first, like in 2002. And then, Mohamedou was the second in 2003.
What was your first impression when you met him?
The shock, honestly. The entire training up before getting to Guantanamo, because we had a month in Fort Dix, New Jersey, a mock prison, and being repeatedly told to never turn your back on them. Be careful, if you let your guard down, they'll find some way to injure you, and even the initial reaction force when you raid a cell and slam the detainee to the ground, and the training for that, they're they'll slice your throat, they'll find a way, and these are truly the worst of the worst people. And then I was also you can never socialize with them, and you never allow them out of their cell without shackles. So when I first meet Mohamedou, he walks out of the cell door with no shackles, with a grin on his face, and I was dumbfounded, It's and then it's nice to meet you, and nice to meet you, shake his hand. I just didn't, couldn't comprehend it at the moment,
Because Steve, it sounds like Mohamedou had started naming names right and left in interrogations to stop the torture, and had been moved into a friendlier kind of setup for himself. But also, I think you had said to me earlier that something else had shifted across the whole facility when you came on, right? That the whole facility kind of had better treatment at the time that you came on compared to even a year or two before that. Is that true?
Yeah, there was their investigations started going on. I think people started catching wind. I know even I think 2 weeks before I arrived, or maybe it was a week before I arrived, the FBI and started their investigation. They sent emails out to every FBI employee which was 300 something.
Investigation into the torture.
Yeah, what did you see when you were in Guantanamo? So they wanted to, make sure the FBI was, good to go and didn't take part, which pretty sure they did take part, but yeah, it's not for me to say.
They were under some level of pressure, and external eyes were on them when you came on, and so it's
Yeah. So everything changed. Even I think it was like a week before before I started with Mohamedou, like his guards stopped wearing masks, you know. Like his full on torture stopped 10 months before I got there. But like, yeah, I mean, it's still torture if all your guards are wearing masks, you know, and you can't, you know, he wasn't allowed to pray before I got there either, you know.
And indefinite detention itself is considered.
Yeah, exactly.